It was a speech full of self-praise that US President Donald Trump delivered before the UN General Assembly. His assertion that Ukraine could reclaim occupied territories has raised eyebrows around the world and hopes in Kyiv. So is Trump really distancing himself further from Moscow? Or is this just another chapter in his unpredictable policy book? Trump is making it clear, not just at the UN, but across the board, that it's only his worldview that matters. At home, he continues to reshape the United States to his own vision. After the murder of far-right activist Charlie Kirk, the president is cracking down harder on his critics. The press, both domestic and international, is facing massive hostility. Critics warn that the US may have already crossed the threshold into authoritarianism. So today on To The Point, we ask, Trump, the unpredictable, what is his real plan for Ukraine and for democracy? Hello and welcome to The Point. I'm Isha Bhatia-San here in Berlin, and these are my distinguished guests. Eric Kirschbaum from the American daily newspaper Los Angeles Times. Malte Lemming from the German daily newspaper Tagesspiegel. And American journalist and political commentator Melinda Crane, who has also hosted this show for a very long time. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining. Now, a lot has happened in the last couple of days. It's the UN, a lot of bilaterals that Trump has had. Jimmy Kimmel is back, so we can't talk about everything. Let's start with Ukraine. Let's focus on Ukraine first. Melinda, Trump has taken a complete 180 degree. What do you make of it? From saying that Ukraine has to give up the territory to saying now that Ukraine is going to get all the territory back. Can one take Trump really seriously?
I would say this is right now still a rhetorical shift, and we don't know whether any action will follow up on these words. So, as you said, Trump himself and his defense minister and his special emissary for negotiating with Ukraine and Russia had all said that territorial concessions on the part of Kyiv probably would be necessary to get any kind of peace agreement. And now suddenly he's talking about Ukraine winning back all its territory and maybe going even further, which was also astonishing.
How further back? That's the question. Like, where are we going? 3 years back, 91? Where exactly?
And yeah, I mean, can Ukraine really win back all that Russia took in 2014 is an open question. But the fact is, if you look at exactly what he wrote, and this was a post on Truth Social, this was not in his speech to the UN, what he wrote gives you no indication whatever that he will change any of his actions. For example, Zelensky has been demanding the Ukrainian president much tougher sanctions right away. Trump so far has made the sanctions conditional, saying the U.S. will only apply tougher sanctions if all NATO member countries stop importing Russian oil. And that sounds pretty conditional, and that's what Zelensky says as well. It's procrastination. Or is America really now going to step up to the plate and start funding weapons, sending them itself? Or is it going to continue acting through Europe? If you look carefully at what he wrote, there is no indication that it's going to change the new mechanism whereby the Europeans buy, they make a deal with the US, and then they deliver the weapons. So essentially, it doesn't look like this new shift is going to be followed up on by action, but we don't know yet. It could change.
How do you see Zelensky's position? Because a few months back, he was like the school kid who was being told, you have to say thank you, you have to wear a suit. I mean, he was being insulted in front of everyone. And now all of a sudden, he is this guy who's resilient, who's stood up to Putin. How do you see his position at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, Trump has a tendency to listen to the last person who talks to him, and it could well be that Zelensky talked to him 5 minutes before he said that. That's just the way Trump is. He changes his mind all the time, very mercurial. But it's interesting, too, it's possible that Trump is just trying to offload this whole problem, Ukraine, to Europe, that he's trying to wash his hands of the problem. It's not mine, it's yours. Trump makes no indication that the cavalry is going to come in. The United States is not about to go support Ukraine, and that's maybe wishful wishful thinking on Zelensky's part that the United States will take a big active military. They won't. The United States is not interested in a foreign war, especially MAGA, Donald Trump's movement. There's no chance that the United States will be sending troops there. So this is just probably a bump in the road, and in 2 weeks, Trump might be saying something else. The one important thing, though, that I disagree with Melinda, is that Trump does make a big issue for a few weeks now that Europe has to stop buying natural gas from Russia. 20 billion euros a year goes from France, Belgium, Slovakia, and Hungary to Russia. 20 billion euros a year Putin is using to help kill Ukrainians. And Trump is disgusted by this and says it's got to stop. And I think he's got a point.
But would you also say that he's given up? Is it like, you don't give me the Nobel Peace Prize, I don't care for your peace anymore?
Trump has no clue what to do with Vladimir Putin. He tries different ways. Intimidation didn't work. Hugging him in Alaska didn't work. Confusing him didn't work. Just Putin sits there and looks what he does, and he still sends his rockets on Ukrainian places and is not impressed by what Trump says. So Trump sees that he's caught in different expectations. The Europeans and the NATO wants more involvement and engagement in the Ukraine conflict. The MAGA movement, as Eric just said, is split. There's a side in the MAGA movement who is not only saying America first, but America only. Saying we have no thing to lose in Ukraine. Let's do the Europeans and NATO do the job. And that's exactly what he said in the Truth Social post. He's saying we were delivering weapons, but not to Ukraine, to NATO, and they can do with it whatever they like to do.
He also said in that post, Russia is militarily essentially failed and also economically weak. Now, surely he would have heard that from Zelensky right before he wrote this post, because they did meet on the margins of the UN General Assembly meeting. He will have heard that, and Trump doesn't like to be associated with weakness. And he's said for some weeks now, he's frustrated with Vladimir Putin. So I think this is also Trump, in a way, sulking, being petulant. Putin has not helped him to get that Nobel Prize he so badly wants. It did not help him to solve the problem in 24 hours. And therefore, as you said, he's inclined to wash his hands. But he also wants to really stick one to Vladimir Putin for now. The interesting thing is, Putin has also just offered to maybe extend the New START treaty after all, the atomic weapons treaty that is due to run out at the end of this year. In other words, he's dangling a new deal in front of Donald Trump. And I haven't yet seen what the White House is saying about that. But Moscow reacted in a pretty relaxed fashion to this new tweet by Trump. So it could be that they are just waiting and then they're planning to play him again.
So before we move ahead, let's take a quick listen to what Trump has really said about Ukraine recently.
Well, the biggest progress is that the Russian economy is terrible right now. As you know, it's crashing. And that, frankly, Ukraine is doing a very good job of stopping this very large army. It's pretty amazing. You know, this is a war that should have ended in 3 days, 4 days. People said it was going to be very quick, and you got to hand it to the Ukrainian soldiers and everybody involved.
3 days, 4 days, 24 hours you just mentioned, it's just not happening. Do you see any strategy, any pattern to his benefit? Is there anything, or is he just struggling?
Trump or Putin?
Trump.
No, I mean, Ukraine is not the main priority of the United States. For Europe, it is. And Trump and a lot of Americans think Europe should take the leadership role here. And Germany merits is taking more of a leadership role. But Putin, the MiGs just crossed NATO airspace last week, 12 minutes flying around Estonia. There was no reaction except for a few press releases and statements. 10 years ago, a MiG was shot down over Turkey after incurring into NATO airspace for 2 seconds. Putin is a KGB agent. He's trained as a spy. But you don't need to be a spy to know that the West is very weak right now. Putin can smell how weak NATO is, how weak the West is, when they let MiGs fly over Estonia for 12 minutes without any kind of a reaction. Putin can sense that, and that's the problem. The United States expects Europe to do this, and Europe is looking to the United States to do it, and the war is going to drag on for years at this rate.
Europe and the UK together are now the biggest donor of military help for Ukraine. It used to be that they were the biggest donor of help altogether that included economic help. Now, since summer, So they are stepping up. They are buying these weapons from the U.S. and, in fact, delivering them to Ukraine under a new mechanism that NATO has created. And we are seeing a shift in responsibility that's underway. Nonetheless, there are weapon systems that only the U.S., in fact, manufactures, and Europe is now working out deals to buy those and deliver them to Ukraine.
Germany's
so
the biggest...
I think the shift is occurring. It will take time, and Europe has a lot of work to do. There's no question about it. But the shift is coming, and the Europeans know it very well.
Germany gives 0.2% of its GDP. 0.2% of its GDP is devoted to Ukraine. The war is here in Europe, and Germany's giving minuscule amounts. Denmark is doing a lot more than Germany.
As you know, Germany now says it is going up with contributions to 3.5 for sure, and then an additional 1.5 in infrastructure and other. So again,
and we're talking about the biggest nuclear power in the world.
Yeah,
that's Russia. And to say that the United States has no place in any kind of solving this problem is not seeing the realities on the ground. I mean, you can't expect from Europe to solve a problem with Russia, the biggest nuclear power in the world. So I think what Trump doesn't want to is to be too closely connected with it, because if it fails, it's on his feet. And the chances are great that it fails and that Putin just continues what he does now since years, since 2014. So it's a kind of cowardice reaction from the American president. He doesn't know what to do.
But Trump has tried diplomacy with Putin. He's tried sanctions and tariffs. And now he's saying that NATO countries could shoot down Russian aircrafts in their airspace if it is violated. Isn't he adding fuel to the fire? He went out to actually douse the fire.
Yeah, he's given the responsibility to NATO countries. He's not taking it by himself. If he would say, I will not tolerate any more missiles driving over NATO space in Europe, and I will act accordingly, that would be another speech, but he won't say that.
Keith Kellogg, his advisor for Ukraine-Russia, General Keith Kellogg, actually has tried to essentially provide some of the steadfastness that we don't see from Donald Trump. He recently said in regard to the incursion into Polish airspace by Russian drones that although President Trump had said, well, maybe it was an error. It definitely was not an error. It was an intentional test. And he has made it very clear that the U.S. does plan to live up to its Article 4 and Article 5 responsibilities under the NATO treaty. But whether Trump himself takes that seriously, basically, public international law, even treaties that the U.S. has signed, doesn't really matter to Donald Trump. For Donald Trump, everything is transactional. Everything is this moment in time. Everything is what can I get out of this for the U.S. And therefore, I think that's what we're hearing here, and why I'm also a bit concerned about how he could react to this new offer of START extension, because he's very worried about atomic war, actually nuclear war. This is something that scares Donald Trump. That's been clear in the past. And if Putin can kind of get to him on that level, Putin may be back in favor before too
Putin
long.
is a master in doing that. As Eric just said, he is an ex-KGB agent, and he's trained in doing that.
Trump's style of governance, as you said, he's more of a CEO than a president. And does that worry you, the way he's dealing with his opponents in the US? He's shutting everyone down. I mean, with press freedom, everything. Does that worry you?
Yeah, you're right to cite the CEO idea, because there's a thinker out there, very popular among the tech billionaires, called Curtis Yarvin. Curtis Yarvin has the idea of a dark enlightenment movement that would essentially consolidate all governing power in the US into the hands of the president, the executive. And this president would be like a CEO, running the state as if it's a core business. The state is supposed to be greatly reduced to just its very core functions. And the president runs this as a CEO with the help of AI. Now, that sounds far-fetched, but just look up Curtis Yarvin and you will see he has very, very important people who are followers, from Peter Thiel, the PayPal founder, to people like Jeff Bezos. They're big fans, and there's a real interest in these theories. And certainly in the Trump administration this time around, we are seeing the biggest project ever to consolidate executive power in essentially winding down checks and balances, in going around Congress, in simply ignoring Congress, in taking back funds that Congress has appropriated, in breaking laws that Congress has passed. And that is absolutely undermining the system of U.S. democracy as it was conceived by the Founding Fathers.
Donald Trump's leadership rulebook is driven by the motto, Trump first, America first. He seeks deals, dominance, and loyalty. He reacts aggressively to criticism, and he suppresses dissent. From journalists to stand-up comics, universities to museums, everyone is expected to align with the president.
Masked ICE agents arrest people without due process. Armed National Guards patrol streets of major cities. Welcome to Donald Trump's USA. While lower courts can block and decelerate the government's curbing of citizens' rights, they often ultimately lose before the Supreme Court. 6 of its 9 justices are ideologically aligned with the president. Trump is also exerting pressure on the independent US Federal Reserve and its chairman, Jerome Powell, even firing one of its members, Lisa Cook. Universities are reportedly adjusting their curricular and admissions policies amid concerns about research funding. And the US government has already started to interfere in museum exhibitions and programs. Critical US media outlets face numerous lawsuits and the potential withdrawal of broadcasting licenses.
They'll take a great story and they'll make it bad. See, I think that's really illegal, personally.
Trump's authoritarian overhaul of America, how far will it go?
That's not how democracies function, right? How far do you think Trump will go?
I'm not so much afraid about his suing of New York Times and Wall Street Journal, because these are 2 big companies and they can handle that. I'm much more afraid about 2 things. The first is the Federal Commission, Communications Commission, tried to intimidate ABC, sending out the Kimmel thing. This is an abuse of power, because this is a minister. The chief is Mr. Carr, who said quite frankly that stop Kimmel or we have other means of dealing with him. Let's say it politely. This is one thing. The other thing is big tech. Donald Trump knows exactly how social media is working, because that's what brought him to power in the first place. That was Twitter to that time. He circumvented the traditional media system by relying on that, because he knows that most Americans take their news from social media. So the alliance between the President of the United States and basically all tech billionaires in the United States, which can use their algorithm to influence what kind of things are reported or not, this frightens me most.
What worries me is that there isn't even a disguise. His posts on Truth Social, it's a rant, but at the same time, there's also a threat, there's a warning. He had written, I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings. I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next. So he had already warned Jimmy Kimmel. And now that Kimmel is back, he's written, last time I went after them, which is ABC, they gave me $16 million. And this sounds even more lucrative. I mean, it doesn't sound like a president. It doesn't sound like governments. Can he really go on like this? Why is there no one stepping up against him?
Certainly, there are people stepping up against him, and the New York Times has sued him. The interesting thing is the big studios, film studios, they now own some of the biggest broadcasters, and that process of merger and expansion and consolidation is only continuing. Larry Ellison of Oracle, is now trying to essentially get hold not just of CBS, but of another big broadcaster. And this Brendan Carr, who was mentioned, essentially has licensing authority over these organizations. And he has made it very clear that he is willing to use that to threaten them about the kind of coverage that they do. And we've actually seen them do what Germans call vorauseilende Gehorsamkeit, that they actually rush to fulfill these wishes before they're even concrete. So we saw Jeff Bezos, for example, remove from the Washington Post a cartoonist and an editorialist who had been critical of Donald Trump. Bezos has said, our opinion page from now on only talking about free markets and liberty. All of that is a form of self-censorship that is very concerning to me. I know it's less concerning to you, but it's something that does deeply worry me.
There's a couple of things that have been said here that I have to talk about. First of all, Bezos has some problems with the editorial pages, but the former editor, Martin Barron, said the news pages are doing a fantastic job covering Trump. And in America, there's a big separation between editorial pages and the news pages. Trump did not fire Colbert. Colbert is going to be on there till May 26. They said it's a business decision. The ratings were weak. They were losing $40 million a year.
But the contract's gone.
Yeah, but it's quite possible in the United States, where everything is for profit, that the show was losing money. Right away, there's all this Trump bashing, especially in Europe, that Trump is an evil force. He is doing some scary things, no doubt about it, but I really believe in democracy in the United States. I believe in free speech, free press, and I think that the United States is bouncing back from these challenges. Newspapers like the New York Times and Washington Post are doing very well, thanks to Trump. He's been a challenge to the free press, but the press is standing up. The whole Jimmy Kimmel incident, if you look at the big picture of that, what happened? His ratings were low. He was suspended for a week because what he said sounded perhaps offensive to a lot of stations that wanted to take him off the air, and those stations took him off the air anyway. But he's been back on 75% of the stations in the U.S., had 6 times as many viewers.
Trump's helped him.
Probably, whatever. But there was a rallying around free speech in the United States. The ACLU actors from they all came out and said how important free speech is. It's something so essential to the U.S. DNA, free speech. The United States denying the Holocaust is not a crime. That's how serious Americans take free speech. That's why, again, I'm very optimistic. My glass is half full. I think free speech will survive the United States and do well. Trump is a challenge, but the United States and the Constitution are a lot stronger.
Okay, somebody's optimistic. You talked of big tech, and that reminds me of this meeting with all the CEOs where everybody is thanking Trump. Now, that, again, I don't know. We're talking about free speech, but everybody telling him what a great president he is, and everybody just goes on saying thank you. That, for me, is also a little worrisome.
Yes. The big tech is using Trump as well. It's not just that Trump is using big tech, but the other way around. The other way around means they want his support by not complying to, for example, European, more stricter rules on big tech, because Europeans have a different version about what can be said and not. And, for example, you're saying denial of the Holocaust. In Germany, it's forbidden. What you do with denial on the Holocaust, if it's a German Instagram or TikTok post, what to do about it. So all the big tech people want the more freedom, the better for us, because we earn our money with the more freedom. It's not just the value that we keep, but it's the money that we want to have. So that's what they are interested in making their alliance with the president.
But the big tech also need people to work for them. And with the new H-1B visa thing, how is big tech going to deal with that?
If I would have a glass being half full, that would be my optimism, that more and more people got affected by this kind of policy. Big tech needs specialists from India, from China, from other places, and no restriction about this. People need workers on the streets, on the fields, in social services, and so on and so on. And so basically more and more people get to know other people who are affected by this kind of stricter policy from not in a good way, in a bad way, being affected by this. And this might bring, for example, the midterms end of next year to some relevant results, meaning the Democrats will have 1 or 2 chambers in the majority.
So what is Trump's vision of America? A country without immigrants, which is a farce for a country that was actually created by immigrants.
That's the vision that he has tried to sell to his base. And a lot of what we hear from Trump is sales talk for the base. And what we see from this Republican Party, it has practically become a cult around the president himself. His whole cabinet is composed only of loyalists this time around, and there are plenty to be had. The fact is, whether it's religion, migration, or something else, these are all issues he uses to polarize because he and this movement profit from polarization, profit literally as well as figuratively. And so going forward, we will see more of that. We will see him using the tools of the trade to sharpen the polarization in the US, and that is a danger for democracy.
I see you're not as optimistic as Eric is. Change is the only constant, they say, but when it comes to Trump, unpredictability is the only thing you can predict. What does this mean for the future of democracy in the US? If you're watching us on YouTube, do let us know your thoughts. Drop a comment, we'll be reading. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.